It started on a Wednesday. The kind of Wednesday where everything feels like it's been pre-chewed by the universe and spit back out. I was at the gas station waiting in line behind a guy arguing with the cashier over a $2 scratch-off ticket. My phone buzzed. One message. Airdropped. No name. No warning. Control your wife, dude. That was it. Just those 5 words and a photo. Blurry like it had been taken in a rush. But it didn't have to be high-res. I knew that back. The way she stands with one foot pointed out, the lazy tilt of her head when she thinks she's being flirtatious. Her hair was in a bun. She only puts her hair like that when she's comfortable. Comfortable enough to sit in someone else's car, hand on his thigh, head tilted toward him like he's the only person who matters. I didn't reply. I didn't react. I paid for my gas, walked out, and sat in the driver's seat without turning the key. I stared at that photo for so long the screen dimmed, locked, then died. And still, I sat there. My wife, let's call her the storm that lived in my house, wasn't supposed to be downtown that night. She told me she had dinner with the girls. She even named them Lori, Taylor, and Megan. I didn't even question it. Why would I? I texted her, asked her how dinner was, and she replied, hilarious. Lori got tipsy and spilled wine on a stranger. Except Lori was in Chicago that week. For work. She had posted photos with her team on Instagram hours before. My wife even liked them. I didn't go home right away. I drove past my exit and just kept going like I could outrun something I wasn't ready to catch up with. Her lies didn't start here, I realized. This wasn't new. This had layers. Built up, stacked neatly, and kept warm in her mouth like a secret she fed herself when I wasn't looking. I went home eventually. Late enough that I didn't have to pretend to smile. She was already asleep on the couch, TV on, some reality show flickering blue across her face. I watched her for a second. She looked peaceful. Like someone who hadn't just been exposed. I walked to the kitchen, opened a bottle of wine, and didn't even bother with a glass. Just leaned against the counter and drank. In the morning, I asked her how dinner was again. She said it was fun. Megan's new boyfriend was a jerk and Taylor ate an entire cheesecake by herself. There was no cheesecake. There was no Megan's boyfriend. There was no dinner. And I said nothing. Just nodded like I believed her. Not because I was afraid of the truth, but because I wanted to see how far she'd go with the lie. Saturday came, and with it, the lie she didn't know I already knew. She was getting ready for yoga. She wore leggings she never wears, the tight ones with the mesh sides. She tied her hair up in that same bun from the photo like some part of her was reliving it on purpose. She sprayed perfume, which was interesting because she always says yoga makes her sweat and she doesn't bother wasting good perfume on sweat. I asked her, what time's your class? She blinked. Just for a second. Like her mind had to catch up. Same as usual. 10:30. I checked her studio site earlier. No classes scheduled on Saturdays. Renovations. Oh, right, I said. You want me to drop you off? That one landed. She turned slowly, lips parted like she'd just remembered I existed. No, I'm meeting Taylor. She's picking me up. Taylor. Chicago Taylor? I nodded. Cool. Tell her I said hi. She didn't. She grabbed her bag and left without another word. I waited 10 minutes, then followed her. Quietly. Distantly. Not because I didn't want to be caught. I wanted her to feel safe. I wanted her to believe no one saw her. She didn't go far. Just to a nearby hotel, the kind with hourly rates and a vending machine in the lobby that still sells condoms in a twist-cap plastic container. I parked across the street. Watched her sit on the edge of the hotel fountain, scrolling through her phone like she was early for a lunch date. And then he showed up. A guy I'd never seen before. Athletic build, shaved head, denim jacket over a hoodie. He kissed her on the mouth before she even stood up. No hesitation. No guilt. She laughed. Loud. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in months. They walked in together. I didn't follow. I already knew everything I needed to. Instead, I waited. Hours. I watched the sun tilt across the sky and disappear behind the strip mall across the street. She came out around 4. Alone. She looked happy. Satisfied. She pulled her hair down, let it fall across her shoulders, and checked herself in the car mirror like she'd just closed a good deal. Like nothing about her life needed an explanation. She came home and pretended to be tired from yoga. Made herself a smoothie. Told me she was sore from all the stretching. I stared at her from across the room. I wondered if the man she met made her sore. If he whispered anything stupid in her ear afterward. Like how lucky he was. I wondered if she said my name by mistake. If she thought about me at all. I doubted it. But what really stuck was how normal she acted. Like I didn't exist. Like our life together was just a long hallway she'd already walked through and closed the door behind without telling me. And that's when something inside me clicked. Not broke. Not cracked. Clicked. Like a safe unlocking. And what was inside wasn't rage. It was clarity. The next morning I played a role. I was careful, measured, gentle even, because the thing about catching a liar is, if you confront them too early, they retreat into denial and take their secrets with them. But if you let them think they're safe, they'll hand you the rest of the truth piece by piece like candy to a child. She made pancakes. I hate pancakes. Always have. She knows this. But she made them anyway, humming in the kitchen, flipping them like a woman who hadn't just come back from lying between another man's sheets. I asked her, "Do you think people are naturally loyal?" She raised an eyebrow, chewing like the question didn't quite land. I mean, I think some are. Others? Not so much. Are you? I asked. She laughed. Laughed. Of course. What kind of question is that? I stared at her. Didn't blink. Didn't smirk. I said, just wondering if you still think loyalty means anything when the lies get too comfortable. She stopped chewing. There it was. That half-second pause. The internal flicker. The fragile moment where truth trembles just beneath the skin and considers crawling out. But she swallowed and kept playing. You're being weird this morning. Am I? You are. She cleaned up without asking for help, like she needed movement to distract her brain. I watched her back. That's when I realized she wasn't afraid. Not even cautious. She believed she'd fooled me so completely that she could coast now. The performance was over. The curtain was down. And I was just the audience that clapped too slow. So I left the room. Quietly. And upstairs, I went into her side of the closet. The one I never touched. She kept an old purse there. Beige leather. Faded edges. I'd seen her use it twice in the past year. Inside it, beneath gum wrappers and ancient receipts, I found a key card. Hotel. The same chain from the day before. The kind with the vending machine and the stained carpets. Still had a small lipstick mark across the edge. I slipped it into my pocket. Left everything else untouched. Then I went to her laptop. Her passwords were saved. She never expected me to look. I didn't go through messages. Didn't check her browser. I went straight for her calendar. There it was. A repeating event. Marked only as meeting every other Thursday at 11 a.m. Always blocked out for 3 hours. The next one, 3 days from now. I added something to that event, a location. Just for her. Just subtle enough. Changed location, C note. And the note? It said, I know. I waited. 10 minutes passed. She didn't come storming upstairs. No confrontation. No panic. 15. Still nothing. Then I heard her phone buzz downstairs. Once. Twice. Pause. Then footsteps. Slow. Purposeful. Her way of pretending not to be rattled. She came to the door. Leaned on the frame. Did you just add something to my calendar? No, I said, meeting her eyes. Must have been a glitch. She stared at me like she was trying to see through glass. But I didn't blink. I smiled. And for the first time since all this began, she didn't smile back. The next morning she was dressed before I even opened my eyes. Not in workout gear, not in her usual loose sweater and leggings, but a tight black dress I hadn't seen in months. Makeup done to surgical precision. Hair curled. Heels. Real ones. The kind she always said hurt too much for casual wear. She stood by the mirror, pretending to fix her earring, but I could feel the tension bouncing off her skin. She wanted me to ask where she was going. She wanted the question more than she wanted an answer. So I didn't give it to her. I rolled out of bed and walked past her without a word. Into the shower. Cold water. Let it run longer than I needed, letting the silence outside stretch and suffocate. When I came out, she was still standing there, hand on her purse like she wasn't sure whether to leave or stay and manufacture some performance. She finally said, "I've got a client meeting. It's last minute." "Cool," I said, grabbing a towel. "What's the pitch?" She blinked. "What? The pitch? You said it's a client meeting. You usually prep for hours. What are you selling?" Pause. "Just a sliver of one." Then she said, "It's more exploratory. Networking. With heels?" I asked. "At 9 o'clock in the morning? I don't tell you how to dress for work." I dried my face and turned to her slowly. "You don't even work Fridays." That did it. Her eyes narrowed, just barely. The shift was subtle, but the rage? Oh, it was boiling behind the lashes. Not fear. Not guilt. Rage. Because she didn't like being seen. Because the lie had been so pretty in her head and I just smeared a greasy fingerprint across it. "I don't need your permission to have a life," she said finally. "I didn't say you did." I looked at her shoes. "Just hope it's worth it. Hope he's worth it." Now she was still. Rigid. But not shocked. No gasp, no denial. Just an inhale through the nose like she was weighing which version of herself to use next. "You're insecure," she said quietly. "This is what you do when you feel boring. You try to find drama to make yourself feel important. You were at a hotel on Wednesday. With someone who isn't me. You don't know what you saw. I know what I didn't see. You coming home with excuses. You coming home with guilt. You didn't even pretend." She exhaled hard, and for a second, I saw it. The flicker of something raw. Then she laughed. "You're unbelievable. You think watching me like a stalker makes you righteous? Grow up." "No," I said, stepping closer. "I think watching you lie while chewing pancakes made me wake up." Silence. Then, like flipping a switch, her face shifted. Calm. Fake calm. Her voice dropped an octave. "If you're gonna start accusing me of stuff I haven't even done, then maybe we're done." There it was. Her version of a nuclear button. Turn it around. Make me the unstable one. Throw done into the air and see if I scramble to catch it. But this time I didn't flinch. "Okay," I said. "We're done." And I meant it. She stared. Not because she didn't expect me to say it, but because she expected it to hurt me more than it did. I walked to the hallway, grabbed my keys, my bag, and just before I left, I turned to her. Still standing there in that tight black dress, heels digging into the hardwood, hands curled like claws around her purse. "I walked away from my unfaithful spouse," I said. And she didn't even flinch. She didn't. She just adjusted her lipstick in the mirror like I was a song she used to like that came on shuffle and interrupted her playlist. And I closed the door. I didn't go far. Just around the corner, to an old diner that served bitter coffee and smelled like burnt toast and cigarette ash, even though smoking had been banned for years. The kind of place you could disappear in without being asked if you needed anything. I sat in a cracked leather booth by the window and just breathed. Not cried. Not raged. Just breathed. The quiet was unfamiliar. Not the kind that makes you feel at peace, but the kind that makes you realize how loud your life had been without you noticing. Amber, or the person I thought she was, filled every moment with a static hum. Her presence was like pressure in your ears that you only notice once it's gone. I stared out the window at nothing in particular and started wondering what I was actually mourning. Her? The life we built? Or the version of myself that tolerated all of it because I was too proud to admit I'd been played? My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Just a single text. "You should know. She's done this before." I froze. Another one. Seconds later. Check 2022. Vegas. That's all I'll say. That year we'd gone through a rough patch. I chalked it up to stress, her dad being in the hospital, work. She'd taken a trip with a friend. Some last-minute getaway to Vegas to clear her head. Said she needed to breathe. I remember I'd bought her a new suitcase for that trip. She never even thanked me. I stared at those texts, fingers hovering over the screen like I could press answers out of it if I held it long enough. Then another message came in from the same number. "I'm not trying to start anything. I just hated watching her do this to you again." No name. No explanation. But that was the crack in the dam. I suddenly remembered little things from the year, how distant she was after that trip, how she cried randomly for no reason and claimed it was just hormones. How she got sick when I tried to be intimate, how she flinched when I reached for her hand. I thought she was grieving. I thought I was helping. No. I was just being managed. I left the diner without finishing the coffee. Walked to my car, got in, and just sat with my thoughts. The pieces didn't just fall into place, they slammed together like a closing fist. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was her. It was always her. And now I wasn't thinking about how to get her back or make her understand. I was thinking about how many versions of her I'd believed in and how many I was about to destroy. Because there was no going back. Not now. But she didn't know that yet. She still thought I'd come crawling. She didn't know I'd already decided to flip the whole thing on its head. And I was going to start with Vegas. The first thing I did was call Dylan. He's the kind of friend who picks up on the second ring and doesn't ask why, just what's next. We hadn't talked much lately, you know how it goes, work, schedules, pretending your marriage is solid, but he was always sharp. Analytical. Paranoid in a good way. I told him about the texts. About Vegas. He went quiet for a full 30 seconds before saying, "You want me to run a name?" I said no. I want you to help me remember everything she tried to make me forget. And with that, we started unpacking 2022. There was a moment back then I hadn't thought about in over a year. Amber had come home from Vegas with a cracked phone. Said she dropped it by the pool. No big deal. She bought a new one the next day and tossed the old one in a drawer. Said it was dead, no point trying to fix it. I never thought twice. Until now. I went back home that night. The air in the house felt thinner. She wasn't there. Her car was gone. And there was a half-empty glass of red wine on the counter. A lazy signal that she'd only intended to be gone a while. I walked straight into the guest room closet. That drawer she never used. And sure enough, there it was, the old phone. Still cracked. Still dead. But Dylan's a wizard. I handed it to him the next morning, and by sunset, he had it booted up with some Frankenstein charger combo and patience that would have made a monk jealous. And what we found? A set of photos. Blurred, yes. Dimly lit. But clear enough. Her. Sitting in a hotel bed in Vegas, wearing a robe that clearly wasn't hotel issued. Same bun. Same smirk. Different man. This one looked older. Graying beard, heavy watch, bare chest. There were messages too. Most deleted, but fragments remained. One in particular that made my skin crawl. "Thanks for the weekend. Wish I could keep you." That was 2 days before she flew back and cried in my arms because she missed me so much it hurt. Lies. All of it. And now that I'd seen it, now that I'd felt it, something inside me split clean in two. This wasn't just cheating. This wasn't about another man or even 10 of them. This was about rot. Something so deeply ingrained in her that she could look me in the eye and ask about my day, knowing she'd spent hers breaking every part of me that mattered. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was sad, but because for the first time I was building the end. Not hers. Mine. My freedom. And I was going to make it hurt, not with revenge, not with rage, but with cold, surgical truth. Because people like her, they don't run from confrontation. They unravel when exposed. 2 days later, she came home with takeout like nothing had happened. Thai food. My favorite. She never remembered the order right, but this time she had it exact. Down to the extra peanut sauce and the specific iced tea I always got. I opened the bag without a word. Watched her settle onto the couch like we were just two people watching a Tuesday go by. She tucked her feet under her, glanced at me, and said, "You've been quiet lately." I didn't answer. She shifted. "Is this about the weird calendar thing?" "I told you I don't know how that happened. My app syncs with some of the team at work. You weren't at work today." She blinked. I checked. Your office manager confirmed it. Now she froze, hand half lifted to her mouth, chopsticks dangling. "You called my office?" "I wanted to send flowers," I said flatly. "They said you were on personal leave." She put the box down. Slowly. Her tone turned icy. "That's a pretty invasive move. And lying to your husband about where you are isn't?" The silence between us thickened. Not tense, loaded. Like a chessboard where one player just realized they're 3 moves from mate and can't stop it. She stood, walked to the sink, and rinsed her hands even though they were clean. Her voice came out lower now. "You're really going through with this? The drama. The accusations. You always needed something to feel big about. I found the Vegas photos, I said calmly. I know about him. About all of them. She didn't turn around. Didn't ask who or what I meant. She just stared out the window over the sink and said, "You were never going to make it easy, were you?" That hit different. Like she wasn't surprised I knew, just annoyed that the mask had finally slipped and now she had to drop the act. I stood too. Walked to the living room and pulled out a manila envelope from under the couch. Set it on the counter next to her. Inside were printouts, the hotel bookings, the text messages, copies of the photos from Vegas, and a notarized letter from a lawyer. She looked down at it, still not touching it. "This is pathetic," she said. "No. What you did was pathetic. This is just the paperwork." She turned then. Sharp, fast, eyes like cold glass. "Fine. You want to be the victim? You want your little moment where you feel like the noble one? Go ahead. Take it. I cheated. I lied. And I'd do it again. Because at least he made me feel something." There it was. Her last bullet. I didn't flinch. "That's the difference between us," I said. "You need someone to make you feel something. I needed someone to be real with me. And you haven't been real since the day we said, 'I do.'" She stared at me, breathing hard now, but I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. "I'm leaving," I told her. "And I'm taking the dignity you thought you buried." She didn't stop me. She just stood there, hands trembling slightly, as I walked upstairs to pack. And when I came back down, suitcase in hand, she was gone. No note, no apology, just the empty takeout box in the trash and the envelope still untouched on the counter. Exactly how she left everything she didn't want to deal with. The first night out of that house felt like a hallucination. I stayed at Dylan's place. He offered his guest room like it was nothing. Like he hadn't just watched me burn down my life with a single match and walk away without watching it collapse. He didn't ask many questions. That's the thing about old friends. They know when to talk and when to shut up. He handed me a beer, turned on the game, and let me sit there in silence with the volume low and my thoughts louder than the commentary. But sleep didn't come. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan turning in slow circles, thinking about the way she used to fall asleep beside me, hand resting on my chest like she owned it. Like she could plug herself into my calm and drain it to refill her own. And now I was lying here, heart racing, wondering how many times I let her pretend. The next morning, the calls started. Not from her. From her friends. Lori, Taylor, even Megan, the ones she said she was always with, the ones she name-dropped like shields in her stories. "You okay?" they asked cautiously. "You and Amber splitting up?" She said it was mutual. Mutual. I laughed. One of those hollow, bitter laughs you don't recognize as your own until it echoes off a wall that doesn't belong to you. "No," I said. "It wasn't mutual. It was calculated. And I was the idiot who thought it was a partnership." They went quiet. One by one. And then Megan said something I wasn't expecting. "She's been different for a while. We stopped hanging out last year. She pushed us away. Said she was tired of being judged." "Judged for what?" I asked. "For whatever she was doing behind your back." There was no smugness in her voice. Just a tired kind of guilt. The guilt of someone who knew but didn't say anything. I hung up without responding. Not out of anger, but because I didn't have anything left to say to anyone who watched her spiral and didn't think to warn me. Back at Dylan's, I pulled out the manila envelope again. Not to obsess. Not to hurt myself. But to take one last look. Because I needed to remember the exact weight of betrayal. The texture of it. The way it doesn't shout, but whispers. Slowly, into your ears over years, until you mistake it for truth. There was a bank statement in there I hadn't noticed before. She'd opened a separate account. Months ago. Transferred money out of our joint savings in small amounts. Strategic, spaced out, unnoticeable unless you were tracking patterns. She had been planning this. Preparing for an exit. But now? Now I had everything. The receipts. The proof. The emotional detachment. The raw, sick clarity. And I wasn't going to let her frame the narrative. I was going to write the ending. And I was going to make it impossible for her to pretend she didn't deserve it. It happened the following Friday, right on schedule, her meeting day. Except this time, the meeting was mine. I showed up at the cafe near her office where I knew she liked to grab her oat milk latte. I arrived early, sat by the window, back to the wall, where I could see every person who walked through the door. Dylan came with me not because I needed backup, but because he knew something was coming. Something theatrical. Something final. She walked in at 11:03, sunglasses on, heels clicking like she owned the sidewalk and every lie she'd ever told. She didn't see me at first. She ordered her drink, phone in one hand, texting fast, eyes skimming the screen like a surgeon prepping for a delicate procedure. Then she looked up, saw me, and froze. I gestured to the seat across from me. She didn't move right away. Just stood there like her hard drive was processing all the different ways this could go. But curiosity or pride won. She walked over, slow and deliberate, and sat down. Removed her sunglasses. Folded them with that precise, rehearsed grace she used when she wanted control. I figured we were done, she said. We are, I replied. So why the drama? I slid a small folder across the table. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside were photos, not of her, not of Vegas, not even the hotel, but of her apartment. The one I just found out she leased in her maiden name 3 weeks ago. A place I never knew existed. Decorated, furnished, ready. Like she expected to move in once I finally cracked. Her face didn't twitch. She was good at this. But her fingers tightened on the folder. You've been following me? No, I said. You've just been really bad at covering your tracks. She looked at me with that expression she used when she wanted to cut someone without raising her voice. You're acting like I murdered someone. No, I said. You just murdered something you never cared to understand. Silence. Then I pulled out the second folder. This one had the prenup she begged me to sign when we got married. She said it was to protect both of us. Her dad insisted, she claimed. Said it was just formal. But it turned out she never filed it correctly. It was missing signatures. The notary wasn't legit. It was all smoke. I spoke to a lawyer, I said. Turns out that document? It's as fake as the life you built. Her face changed then. For real this time. The smirk cracked. The posture faltered. The entire scaffolding of her confidence trembled. I want you out of the house, I said. By Monday. I've started the paperwork. And I've frozen the accounts you were siphoning from. You'll get what you're entitled to. But not a cent more. She tried to speak. I cut her off. And if you try to twist the story, if you try to tell people it was mutual or that I was controlling, I'll release the timeline. The bank statements, the photos, the calendar edits, all of it. Now she was leaning forward, whispering through clenched teeth. You're enjoying this. No, I said. I'm surviving this. The enjoying part comes later. Then I stood, calmly. Dylan stood with me. And I looked her dead in the eyes and said, You underestimated the man you married. But more than that, you overestimated the woman you became. We left her there, sitting with her cold latte and her collapsing narrative, surrounded by strangers who didn't know they were in the presence of someone who burned her own world down and called it freedom. And I didn't look back. A month passed. Not in the way time usually passes, where you barely feel it and everything blends into the next. No, this was sharp, clean. Each day carved out of me a little more of the rot she'd left behind. I moved into a small apartment overlooking a construction site. It was loud, dusty, messy, and it felt more honest than anything I'd had in years. Amber never fought back. Not really. She tried for about a week, a few emails, thinly veiled threats masked as concern. Let's talk privately. We don't need to involve lawyers. I think you're reacting emotionally. This isn't good for either of us. I didn't respond. Eventually, she stopped pretending. I heard she moved into that apartment she leased in secret. Decorated it with the same minimalist Pinterest look she always clung to: cold grays, artificial plants, furniture that looked expensive but meant nothing. A shell of a home for the shell of a person she became. Mutual friends vanished, either too awkward to pick sides or too afraid to ask questions. I didn't mind. I didn't want sympathy. I didn't need people to tell me I did the right thing. I just needed out, and I got it. The day the divorce papers were finalized, I didn't celebrate. I didn't drink. I didn't even post about it. I just went to the lake. Sat on the edge of the dock with my feet hanging over the water. Phone turned off. No distractions. Just me, the sky, and the silence. And you know what? I felt peace. Not joy. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just the kind of peace that comes from finally standing still after years of walking through emotional quicksand. I thought about all the lies she told. All the stories she spun. The way she looked me in the eye and fabricated entire realities. And I wondered not what made her cheat, but what made her so comfortable living behind a mask for so long. But I didn't need the answer anymore. Because the real question wasn't about her. It was about me. Why did I stay so long? And the truth was simple. Because I wanted to believe love meant something. I wanted to believe that effort and loyalty and history could stand up to betrayal. That if I just held on tighter, she'd remember what we had. But love without truth is just theater. And I'm done performing. So here's my advice for anyone reading this, anyone stuck in the same quiet war. If your gut whispers, listen. If the love feels one-sided, it is. And if you walk away from someone who never flinched when they hurt you, keep walking. Because what's behind you is a ghost. And what's ahead? That's where the real living begins.